Call to order the Gurnee Village Board meeting for December 20, 2021. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Present.
Thorstensen.
Here.
Woodside. Ross.
Here.
Garner.
Here.
O'Brien.
Present.
5 present, 1 absent.
I'll stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Balmas, second by Trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner. O'Brien.
Aye.
5 aye.
Motion carries. Pat?
Item number 1, approval of the minutes from the December 6, 2021 public hearing and village board meeting. Item number 2, approval of ordinance 2021-80, setting forth a legislative finding and declaration pertaining to ordinance number 2000-72, granting plan unit development approval for industrial zone property along the south side of Morrison Drive, east of Delaney Road. Item number 3, approval of payroll for period ending December 3rd, 2021, in the amount of $1,217,819.87. Item number 4, approval of bills for period ending December 20th, 2021, in the amount of $1,296,781.01.
Is there a motion? Motion
Second.
by Trustee Garner, second by Trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner. O'Brien.
Aye.
5 aye.
Motion carries. The next item is petitions and communications. It's the approval of proclamation designating January 2022 as Lake County Crime Stoppers Month in the village of Gurnee. This proclamation designates January 2022 as Lake County Crime Stoppers Month in the village of Gurnee. Crime Stoppers benefits the citizens and business communities in and around the village of Gurnee by partnering with law enforcement to provide crime-solving assistance. All those in favor of that proclamation? Oh,
Motion.
sorry. Motion by Trustee Balmas.
Second.
Second by Trustee O'Brien. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item on the list is a presentation by Management Analyst Jody Luca for the Small Business Capital Investment Grant Program update. Jody.
Hello, thank you. So, as you know, September 20th, the Village Board adopted Ordinance 2021-63, amended the fiscal year 22 budget for the Village of Gurnee, and with that, we were able to offer the Small Business Capital Grant Program. The goal of that was to invest back in the community, as we see that we do have the financial means to do that at the moment. So the first press release went out on November 2nd. And since then, we've been working with qualified businesses regarding the grant application and submittals. As a reimbursable program, the qualified applicants must submit proof of all of their paid receipts. They have to show good standing with the village, and as well as requirements, licensing, permitting, tax remittance, and such. So as of now, we have 17 applicants that have applied, 17 qualified applicants. We did have one applicant who was part of a chain restaurant, so I did talk with the gentleman. He was understanding and withdrew his application at that point. As of right now, it's 7 restaurants, 9 retail businesses, and 1 amusement business. And the total funding right now, that if from all of the applications that have been submitted, if awarded, will total $124,538.70. Right now, when we talk to the village, to the businesses, and we ask them what the value of the investment is, I think that we have to work on with them as to what we define the value of the investment. Some of them have told us the cost of the investments versus the value of what a project is that they've done. So right now, the total that we have for that numbers per their reporting numbers is $984,902.85. So these are the completed projects that happened in the village, and this year, these were all done during COVID. A lot of the companies capitalized on the time that the that everything was closed down and they were able to invest in their business, not knowing what life after COVID was going to look like. So on here, as you can tell, some of the total project budget that the businesses have claimed. It's kind of a combination of what the value was for it and also the budget that they spent or that they allotted for the whole entire project to be done. So if you look at Dairy Queen, for example, their total project budget was $244,112. The total amount awarded was the maximum of $10,000 because it's matching grant up to 10 grand. If you go down a little bit more, Glowmore Cosmetics and Spa, their total project budget to open up was $24,907. But when looking through all of their submitted expenses, they qualified to be awarded $4,100. So some of the submitted expenses included furnishings and fixtures and equipment, and those do not qualify for the program. So I did talk with the owner there. She was completely understanding. And all of these, although they're done with the project itself, some of them are still working on completing, well, one of the requirements, I should back up to say, is obviously have to remit tax to the village, and a few of them are actually really new businesses that have come on, so we're waiting for them to pop up on our tax rolls, and at that point, we know that they've completed everything and we can work with them. So I'm in contact with everybody. They're aware of their standings as they are right now. Of these, 4 have actually been awarded the funds. The checks have gone out to 4 of the businesses on here. The rest of them, we've been in contact, and they're aware of the standing right now. If you do look at Artsonia right now, they're to be determined. What they did submit was, they submitted racks, warehouse racks. So that is part of the FF&E that's not qualified. But I did speak with him, and they did a big project. They blew out a wall. They changed some of their HVAC system that was in there. So they do have qualifying expenses that would work for this project, but it's his busy season right now. So we've talked with him, and he's asked that we keep his application on hold, but work with him once the new year comes. So that's why there's a to be determined of that part. Next, we've got projects in progress. So these are projects going on right now. We've got Fake Meats. They're working on an interior construction for their project. What he has submitted is $57,350 for the project. Obviously, what he's doing is going to be a lot more, but with the maximum award amount being $10,000, talking to him, he said, "This is what you got. I can't go for more." So the value and the total project budget was a little bit more, but that's what he gave us. Same thing with Top Shelf, Ice Arena, and Right Executive Suites is working with her tenants right now because she is a landlord. So we're making sure that all the tenants in the building are up to speed as well in regards to proper business licensing and so on. So her tenants, she does have a few retail tenants in there, and she's looking to improve the ADA spaces. And the next one is proposed projects. So these projects are going to be able to be completed because of the grant. So in speaking with most of these business owners, these were projects and scopes that they were hoping to accomplish. Some of them were completely unable to do them until they saw the announcement of the grant program, to which at that point they reached out to see what was needed, and we're working with them to make sure that all their permitting is in process, the permitting is moving along, as well as in good standing with tax submission and everything like that. So I can say that the businesses that I've spoken to are extremely grateful for this. Like I said, if it wasn't for this, I know that, let's see what's going on. Oh, sorry. I do know that, like Saluto's, one of his projects that he's doing is upgrading the HVAC system for his chefs. The kitchen, that HVAC system specifically in the kitchen has broken down. They're working with opening some doors, getting some fans in there, and by having this project, they're grateful. He's expressed that it's written on his application, so it's kind of the warm fuzzies that you feel when you're going through these applications. It's great working with them. Some of the efforts that we're going on right now is continued outreach with businesses that have completed projects. We have pulled information from our permitting software, and I've reached out to the majority of the businesses. I know Trustee O'Brien has as well gone to many of the businesses that have completed projects to let them know about the grant that's out there, and so that effort will continue. And we are also reaching out to new businesses that will qualify in the area and let them know that the grant is out there and what they would need to do within a certain amount of time to be eligible for the grant. And then ongoing I do know that as long as we have this, that a lot of the grant applications do need continuous assistance in moving through the process, just making sure that all the correct information has been submitted. So with that, are there any questions that I can answer?
Anybody have questions?
Yes.
Trustees Thorstensen?
And maybe you haven't calculated yet, so I'm just giving you an out if you want to say
Okay.
we're not there yet. But in the very beginning, people were estimating that value. Are you looking at as a return on investment of the specific project that would be approved for the COVID purpose? For example, I see somebody had 200,000 as a project, but, you know, an HVAC
Correct.
is one piece of it that's very accountable to be aligned with COVID. So tell me more about how we're trying to get that value pinpointed towards eligible projects.
So right now, we are really looking and kind of, right now, as somebody submits the application and they say, you know, yeah, it's a $200,000 submittal for the HVAC system, at that point, I am working with them a little bit, and some of these numbers, as we go along within the project a little bit more, and we work with a little bit more people to gain a little more information, and be able to kind of fine tune this, and there will be essentially another column on here, and one will be the project budget as well as the value, and what we can do is narrow it down either specifically what it is that we're applying these funds towards, or if we want to look at the whole big picture and say, if, for example, Fake Meats had to knock down a wall and then expand their HVAC system, it's part of a larger project, and we can look at the larger investment that's being done with this too. So as we go along, as I'm talking to more people and gaining more information, also learning how to ask the right questions without changing the application for consistency.
And then maybe along that line, if I'm hopeful that we can continue to budget this going forward every year, are you looking for an ROI of more of like less than 5 years or something like that, so it's more tangible?
That will be part of a larger conversation as we move forward if we want to do this in the future. I think that when talking about what a capital investment is, that can be up for discussion. Fortunately, within our guidelines of what qualifies, we've narrowed that down, but we haven't looked at the value part. So without making any assumptions, I do know that's possible, but I wouldn't feel comfortable answering unless we have a larger discussion about it.
Keep it broader.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry, one quick last question then. So there are some businesses I did not see on there, and I appreciate that there's been some outreach, because that was going to be my question. What if a business did not apply for a permit to, say, add plexiglass? That plexiglass to the, not receptionist, but the cashier, that itself would be eligible, correct?
We do have COVID expenses as part of what's eligible, so a lot, right now, we haven't received any applications that are more COVID items specifically. These are larger projects on a larger scale. So I think if we were to receive something like that, and more conversations would have to happen with the business owner, only because part of the requirements is to make sure that you didn't receive any other federal funding or state funding with any of the projects that you're requesting reimbursement for. So that would be part of a larger project, or part of another question with that person. But if there's a larger project that happened while this was going on, we can make sure that they're not getting reimbursed twice. I wouldn't see why not.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else on this side? No? Yes, Trustee Garner?
If a business has already been awarded, say, let's use Glowmore Cosmetics, they've already gotten 4,100. If they wanted to do a second project, could they get a second award?
Absolutely. So it's up to $10,000 for that business. It's not a one-time try. Yeah. Every time somebody's applied and it's been under that $10,000 mark, I do have a conversation to make sure that they're aware that if they go through or they make any other improvements, they can always come back as long as funding is still available.
Great.
Anything else? No? So I really appreciate it, Jody. I really like the reaching out part. I think that it seems unusual, but other towns experience that programs just like this aren't used, or they're vastly underused, and I think that by us pursuing businesses, they're busy, they're making money, it's like they're not expecting the village to be handing out money, so they're not looking for it. So I really appreciate the contact. I think that's wise on our part and guarantees success for us. So thanks for all your hard work on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll give it a couple months and then have Jody back to give another update, say 2 months down the line as far as where the program's at, so.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the next on reports is presentation by Assistant Village Engineer Nick Leach, 2021 All Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan Progress Report.
Yeah, so Nick's gonna walk us through this, as engineering does on an annual basis, and then we're gonna have him stick around for the next 2 items on the agenda as well.
Just passing out a map that'll be more easily seen on paper rather than the presentation because of the low quality in the projector. Good evening, Mayor and trustees. This presentation serves as our annual notification to the public and to the board regarding the 2017 All Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan and steps we've taken this year, this past year. As the name suggests, this plan identifies all natural hazards. It also assesses vulnerabilities and determines how to minimize or eliminate risk based on a set of agreed upon goals. The goals of the All Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan include protecting the lives, health, and safety of the people of Lake County from impact and effects of natural hazards, protecting public services, utilities, and critical facilities, mitigating existing buildings to protect against damage from natural hazards, ensure that new developments do not create new exposures of people and property to damages from natural hazards, and to mitigate to protect against economic and transportation losses due to natural hazards. The mitigation plan is also a requirement of the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. So in order to qualify for grant funding, which we've utilized very successfully to acquire and remove properties from the floodplain, we must adopt and maintain the plan. Every year, we must review the plan, any hazards encountered, and discuss how our action items have been implemented. There is also a county-wide meeting held annually where the overarching plan is evaluated and updated, and updates are recommended. FEMA requires hazard mitigation plans to be updated and readopted every 5 years. The next countywide plan is scheduled for an update next year, 2022. This will be the last year we use the 2017 annual or all natural hazard mitigation plan. Our mitigation action plan or our action items, these action plan outlines the recommended activities and initiatives to be implemented. The previous 5 years, it was understood that the implementation is contingent on the availability of resources and staff, resources for staff and funding. We selected action items that are pertinent to the community and obligated ourselves to 22 of the possible 35 action items. A summary of the natural hazards. The plan lists all the different possible natural hazards in Lake County, and those listed here are the ones focused on this plan. The Village of Gurnee frequently sees flooding, occasionally sees tornadoes, and our share of severe summer storms and winter storms. Additionally, the plan covers droughts, earthquakes, dam failures, extreme temperatures, erosion, and power outages. Today's update highlights some of our key action items and what we've been doing to satisfy those requirements. The current All Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan was created in June of 2017 and adopted by our village board on October 9th, 2017. That plan and our annual reports are available on our village website under the transparency portal. As part of the goals of the countywide all natural hazard mitigation plan. Gurnee continues to enforce and implement the Watershed Development Ordinance, the WDO, and the NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program requirements. The village sends out many forms of communication to educate our residents about hazards. Gurnee's most prevalent natural hazard is flooding, and the village looks to be proactive by sending out annual letters educating our residents that live within the floodplain. This helps educate residents about proper insurance and ways to protect themselves and their property from flooding. We reach out via letters, pamphlets, providing information in our monthly newsletter, and additionally, we also maintain material on our website. Before and during natural hazards, the village has a very responsive communications team that effectively uses social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, and CTY reverse 911 calls to convey critical messages. This past year, the village did not see many large floods, storms, or snow events. We did see some high winds last week that knocked out power briefly for some areas east of town, but it was not heavily impacted. We did have the Lee Avenue lift station lose power briefly and found out that the generator did not switch over. Luckily, it was without power for only a few hours, and to this point in time, there has not been any reports of sanitary sewer backups for any residential homes. This leads me into our next action item, providing alternative power to critical facilities during natural hazards. And this year, we intend on installing a generator at our Heather Ridge Water Tower, which currently does not have one. And for next fiscal year, the village plans on budgeting for a generator to update the Lee Avenue lift station generator. This generator was scheduled to be updated long before the outage we encountered last week. Another action item is improving drainage systems. This past year, the village was able to replace major drainage culvert under Waveland Avenue and improve the drainage capacity. And this, for next fiscal year, we'll look to budget to replace the Grove Avenue Road culvert that causes routine backups during heavy rain events and sometimes overtops the road. Gurnee also continues to maintain our Tree City USA designation. One of the requirements is to have an urban forestry program that encourages tree trimming and removal of dead trees to help protect utility lines during wind and ice storms. We try to update our building codes when possible. The village is in the process of updating and adopting the most recent building code. And finally, we continue to look to reduce inflow and infiltration into the sanitary sewers to help prevent sanitary sewer overflows or basement backups. The village will look to budget for next fiscal year for sewer televising and sewer lining program if budget allows. Public Works does continue to rot out public sewers as needed if the mains begin to surcharge. The village did not see any sanitary overflows, SSOs, due to natural hazards this past year. The next action item that we are quite familiar with is flood mitigation. Here we utilize grant funding and the very helpful staff at Lake County SMC to apply for and obtain grant funding to remove homes from the floodplain through our voluntary programs. Our priority locations remain the same, Kilbourne Road, Emerald, McClure, and Old Grand. Here's a map of the priority properties in the floodplain, the one I just passed out. We have removed 2 residential homes at no cost to the village. This past year, that was 1046 Kilbourne and 991 Kilbourne, and 2 commercial buildings, which the village paid for this past year, we removed. That was the old Dairy Queen building and salon. The village and Lake County SMC were able to get 2 more residential properties added to the list, 1054 and 1062 Kilbourne Road. They were fully funded through the IDNR grant program. Lake County SMC is currently working with the property owners to get closing documents signed. Demolition is expected to be done this next year, assuming property owners continue with closing and final paperwork. 881 Emerald, which is on the map on the projector, is a smaller arrow south of the larger arrow along Emerald Road. This was expected to close on November 29th, 2021, but Lake County indicated that there was some issues during closing. This is still expected, it's still expected at this point to be purchased and demoed at some point. The green properties remain a priority while the reds have been removed since 1987. 14 properties, not including the blue, which blue indicates in progress, remain out of the 51 on this map. So that approximately that's 70% of the properties on this map have been removed over a 34-year period, which equates to basically a property per year since 1987. Referring back to the NFIP, as you know, FEMA manages the National Flood Insurance Rate Program, which delivers flood insurance through a network of insurance companies. Flood insurance is required by many of our residents since they have insurable properties within the special flood hazard area, also known as the floodplain, including the village. Through FEMA, the village participates in the community rating system, which offers discounts on National Flood Insurance Program insurance premiums. As the community engages in additional mitigation activities, its residents become eligible for increased NFIP policy premium discounts. The village is a Class 6, currently giving a 20% premium reduction to residents in the special flood hazard area and a 10% reduction to residents outside the special flood hazard area. In order to receive a higher class designation, additional mitigation activities must be performed each year. The village performs various mitigation activities such as maintaining current floodplain mapping, sending notification to residents in the special flood hazard area, employing certified floodplain managers, and following and enforcing the watershed development ordinance. Additionally, by adopting an all-natural hazard mitigation plan, it helps us achieve the Class 6 rating as well. The village has worked very hard to maintain its Class 6 rating. Several years ago, the village became storm ready, and we've maintained that designation with National Weather Service, keeping us ready for action when severe weather strikes. And finally, we continue to train employees in National Incident Management System, NIMS, also known as NIMS, so we're able to respond to hazard incidents and communicate well across all departments. This concludes our annual review of the 2017 All-Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. With that, are there any questions?
Mayor?
Trustee Bomas?
So on this, there are structures, the green, that you've got as priority sites, but in between our houses and that, why are they not priority?
Is that on McClure Avenue?
Well, there's some on McClure, and there's some on Old Grand that
So the list was based off of lowest adjacent grade, so that's the lowest grade adjacent to the house, so where water would potentially touch the house. So this is how that list was developed. There is another list that categorizes basically what is the lowest home, or what will be the first home or property impacted by the flood, and then they're ranked according to that. On this list, we have 50 or so properties, which were all based on lowest adjacent grade. So like with the one on McClure, that had a very low grade around the property, so that would be inundated first before any of the properties on that lot. Additionally, what was also taken into account is how many claims they've had for flood insurance. So how many times they've taken a claim. I don't know how many, I can't report on how many times they've claimed, but that was another factor in terms of adding that to this priority list.
yeah, that level thing is not my favorite thing, but that's okay. I'm out, I'm done, I got it.
Anybody else have any questions? Trustee Thorstensen?
Hi there. So, does this plan cover the analysis and identification, or does it include communication?
It pretty much incorporates everything. So it looks at natural events that we have in Lake County, analyzes them, and then basically these action items that we elected to abide by kind of forces us to, you know, it's an active, plan that we continually update and report on every year to make sure we're reaching our goals. So I guess your question is does it cover communication as well as going over each type of natural event? Yes.
Yeah, so does it, so you're taking controls, I think of the tornado sirens that were out or was hit by one of our tornadoes a couple of years ago. So that's kind of taking it down to the level of detail. But then I look at Jack because as the public information officer, do our residents know, or how often do we communicate to them about the importance of them being aware of the outside tornado sirens to help be aware of what they need to do?
Jack can take this if you'd like.
I also could look to John for this too, but for the sirens, so what we've done in the past is when we do have a special weather event occur, we'll put out information about the sirens, locations, what they're for, and specifically what they're not for. So that they're not for the primary notification, they're for outdoor notification. But for the all-natural hazard mitigation plan, it does include some items on communication, on website. Annually in our newsletter, we put out information for residents, really specifically focused on flooding and flood control. So this plan primarily flooding. Does that address?
I think so. So what would you say offhand is your frequency of communication to our residents about the sirens?
The sirens specifically, usually after an event or before an event, we'll put out some information. We've done some in the newsletter too, just so that they're aware, because there are questions that come up about it.
So
you
you'd
know.
say annually because there's a likelihood of a tornado season?
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
usually annually, we'll put out some information just about what it is. Really, the messaging that we've been putting out lately too is what to turn to. Again, we try to put out information, and you probably see it, next door, everything. If there's a big major weather event, snowstorm coming up, we put out information on it. But we don't want residents to rely on us as the primary source of information, as it's kind of dictated through state and national planning for emergencies. That communication comes best from the weather agencies, news broadcasts, et cetera. So our advice always is to residents to turn on broadcasts, local weather radio, to rely on information instead of the village.
We also test every Tuesday of the month, first Tuesday of the month, the siren itself.
First Tuesday of the month, yep, they do a test at 10 a.m.
Thank you.
Trustee Russ?
So this is a plan for this year, and then you said there's going to be a new plan for, in 2022? So will it basically be this continuing on?
Yeah, so there's a countywide plan that we adopt and then kind of make it our own on what our local objectives would be. So this would still, that map kind of would still be our priority going forward. Again, it's all, our buyout program is all voluntary based, so we're really reliant on educating property owners, making sure they're aware of the program and the benefits, ideally if they participate. So we say it's priority, but it's basically whenever we have funding or if the property owner is willing to participate in those programs.
I guess my question was just, you just continue on with this, you don't start all over with?
Correct.
Anything else? Thank you, Nick. Appreciate your hard work. No old business.
Correct.
On the new business, confirmation of emergency under the Village of Gurnee purchasing policy related to the El Grande Avenue Phase 2 water main replacement project connection at the Canadian Pacific Railroad crossing.
Sure. So this item and the next on the agenda are related. Give you a high-level overview, and then Nick can get more technical. Sent out an email to the village board on Friday, December 10th regarding this issue. So as you know, we've been having a problem for quite some time getting permitting from the Canadian Pacific Railroad to install that new pipe underneath the tracks. We were hoping to get a permit here in December, and what we got back were multiple comments that needed to be addressed. Not enough time to get those comments addressed back into the railroad and get a permit before the weather goes south and the contractor can't work out there anymore. This connection being down would cause great problems if we had a main break on Old Plain Road. Basically, the area between Fuller to the tracks could be impacted substantially due to how our water system works and topography. This includes police department, fire department, public works, village hall, the schools. So rather than take that risk between now and the spring, the contractor was still on site, got an estimate from them to connect to the old connection underneath there to get that water flowing again. They provided that proposal since they were getting ready to pack up and leave, and we had a good weather week, and the potential that this could cause if there was a main break. Got together with the finance director, engineering, took a look at it. In our opinion, it was an emergency situation. Since the price was over my threshold as far as what I can approve, which is $20,000, that's this first item on there, so declaring an emergency situation. The work's been completed. We got that done while they were here, but it needs village board final approval. So the first is declaring an emergency, second is that actual change order. So Nick can give you a little better understanding of how the water system works and why this is such a potential for something bad to happen between now and the spring. So.
Thanks, Pat. When we started this job or bid this job out in July, it was our full intention to complete this job before the end of the year. The railroad, we started our permitting 2 years ago, and this past December 10th was kind of our cutoff date based on the review comments back. We've had to go through the Canadian Pacific's railroads, transitioning from doing in-house permitting to consulting out to a third party. So we had to submit our permit documents several times to different reviewers, getting comments back each time. So it was our full intention to get that done. It was just the timing of everything was not ideal. So when we had that cutoff date, internally we had to discuss about what would be the potential for leaving the main disconnected over the winter months. And it was basically discussed that if you look at the first map in the packet showing Zone 2, originally there was 4 crossings, and the red circle is indicating where the old crossing was and where the new crossing would be. If we did not reestablish that line going to the second map on the backside, we'd be reliant on the 3 crossings to the south. The way Zone 2 is fed, there's no water source, so it needs to be fed from a water source. Zone 1 has Northwestern Tower, so that pushes water into Zone 2. That water would then need to travel all the way south to the 3 crossings and then distribute on the west side of the Canadian Pacific Railroad, which is indicated with a black dashed line. The red, obviously, rectangles are the 4 crossings, and the blue one would be the new crossing. So we were relying on the 3 crossings to the south, which were 2 6-inch pipes and an 8-inch pipe. Once that water reached the west side, it then would have to go into Zone 2 and then north up into the northwest area. We decided that it would not be good practice to rely on a main, which would be the Old Plain Road water main. To rely on that main, just because it has had so many issues over the years, especially during the winter season. That main feeds the entire northwest portion of that zone, that green dashed area. If we did not have the connection at Old Grand, one main break in that area could lead to catastrophic outages through that whole area, the area in green that is indicated by the impacted area, which then would require boil orders for that entire area, leading to, residential areas, businesses without water. We thought it would be our best interest to reestablish the connection into the old main, doing 2 pressure connections. The next drawing is showing the orientation of the water main. So the newly installed water main was installed along Old Grand. We decided to put 2 pressure connections on either side of the railroad, tying back into the old 12-inch cast iron main. The main that has been installed is indicated in red. The main that will be installed in the spring is dashed in green, is a 12-inch PVC pipe under the railroad. This fix is temporary, but we will be able to keep that line established, theoretically increasing our capacity under the railroad, as long as that 12-inch cast iron remains functional. So we do intend on keeping this open even when the new main has been installed in the springtime. So that was pretty much the reasoning behind reestablishing the main to avoid catastrophic outages across that impacted area. Do you want me to, I'll explain the remobilization as well?
Yeah, cover that.
So since we were unable to finish the job this year, Joel Kenny Constructing had to pull out of the area all their equipment materials. There's a cost associated to that. After discussing with them, they were willing to charge a little less than $15,000 remobilization fee for bringing their equipment back into town, their supplies back into town. They will be installing the pipe only. Discussing with them, they are a water main contractor. They install water main for a living. They do not do restoration for a living. So they indicated to me with a little amount of restoration and a little amount of patchwork for the concrete and asphalt path, that would be a large cost to them because they're not accustomed to doing that. So we decided to go with just the mobilization fee of $15,000 just to remobilize to install the water main under the railroad. Our staff will take care of restoring the landscaping within the Viking Park and on the east side of the railroad tracks in the spring after the work has been completed.
Sure, so that sums up the situation. Just as a reminder, this total project was $1.12 million, so this total change order is just over $100,000, $85,000 for the connection, and then about $15,000 for the remobilization of the spring, so about a 10% change order on the project. Again, there's money in the budget to cover it. We would have hoped we'd been able to avoid this situation and had the permitting in place from the railroad, so Joel Kennedy could have installed the new 12-inch main under the tracks, but unfortunately, that's not where we're at. And with the potential this has, as far as the size of the area impacted and how long it could be impacted for, we felt it was most prudent to get this taken care of, so we did. So looking for your concurrence on that, and then your authorization of the change order.
Any questions?
I do.
Trustee Bowles?
I know this is probably a worthless comment, but is there any way to recoup any of this from the railroad since they're,
The railroad has been here since the beginning of time, and we are held captive by the railroad. So until we give them what they want, we're not gonna get a permit. I mean, could be no different with us dealing with people. We work with people better, but we are at their mercy on this. So, no.
Yeah, that's an Amtrak line, so that's a common carrier, so they have a very high standards, because if there's any settling of any excavation on the railroad track, and that's the Amtrak line between Chicago and Milwaukee. So, yeah, generally speaking, because they're in that sensitive position, sometimes these things can happen.
and do we have any hope that by the spring, that they're going to give us the permitting?
Yes, I'm confident that with the next round of addressing their comments, we will be able to acquire the permit come January, February, to be ready for construction in March, end of March.
Thank you.
Ms. Trustee Ross?
I trust that there's a reason for this, but going all the way north and up to put the 12-inch pipe in, was there a reason you couldn't just put it in where the 8-inch pipe is right now?
So originally, our plan was to go under the bridge, which is down the center of the road, but the railroad declined that, saying there was too many conflicts, and they didn't want that pipe there. So we had to redesign it to head north, which was actually a change order back in the summertime to get a design to get the water main traveling north, and then west, and then back south to re-tie in. They're like their own country, so it's very hard to do anything.
Yeah. And I mean,
Does it make sense that under the road wouldn't have been better than under the tracks? Okay.
That's a good question.
Chinese logic.
Own country.
We will not go on the record, Nick, to say that railroad is bad in any way. We appreciate the
Correct.
railroad and all that they do for us. Just in case they see.
Nice try. So moved.
All right.
Second?
So we're talking with reference to the item number 1 to confirm this is an emergency, right? So it's by trustee Balmas, second by trustee Ross. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
5 aye.
Item number 2, which is the related one, approval of ordinance 2021,
81.
authorizing a change order to the construction contract with Joel Kennedy Construction Corp. For the Old Grand Avenue Water Main Replacement Phase 2, project in the amount of $100,350 to allow the reestablishment of a water main connection under the Canadian Pacific Railroad tracks and remobilization efforts in the spring. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee O'Brien, second by trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner. O'Brien.
Aye.
5 aye.
Motion carries. Now on to public comment. If anybody would like to make a public comment, they could step to the microphone and give their name, please. There being none, at this point, we're going to go into the executive session, and it's my understanding that there won't be any business that will occur after coming out of the executive session. Is that correct? And
That's correct. We'll need to have a roll call vote. The purpose for going into executive session is exemption 14. Twice a year, the board is to review prior executive session meeting minutes and basically decide whether those should be published at the following meeting. And that's the purpose. We do need a motion and a roll call.
so is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner. O'Brien.
Aye.
5 aye.
So this meeting will be adjourned, and we will return.